Hey everybody, welcome on in. As always, I'm your host, Joseph Potter, and today we're going to be talking about the Browns X Factor on offense. And I know everybody would talk about Judkins and Fannin and even Casey Concepcion, but I think right now we need to be looking at the at a different pick. NFL draft, second round. We're looking at Denzel Boston. I believe he was taken number seven or nine in round two. So number 39. So that'd be seventh overall, yes, in round two. And out of Washington, 6'4", 215 pounds. Now, why is he the X factor? Well, sharp routes. Sharp routes are one. Big hands, it's like a vice, catches everything. That's two. Three, the man pushes through competition and drives through the ball. He doesn't let the ball come to him, he drives through it. And rather than sit here and talk about it, well, we're going to show you a little bit, courtesy of X, formerly Twitter. This is a little bit of camp news, a little bit of camp footage we're going to show you right now. And I'm going to try to make this a little bit bigger because I want you guys to see exactly what I'm talking about here. So, look at him. Look at how he's changing the defense, making the defense guess. Where is he going? Where is he going to be? Look at the ball placement. It's always in front, and he goes and attacks it. Look at how much bigger he is. That's Carson Swessinger. He's just as big as Carson Swessinger. That's middle linebacker. Carson Swessinger, and look how he's doing it in traffic. He got Ross on him, chasing him. You got Swessinger. Right there you had he was being jammed by Delpit and Ronnie Hickman running across. Look at the feet. Look at the feet. Look at the turn. Short turn radius. Hands always out in front. Now this is just one clip. So let's go ahead, make this. See another one here. Once again, look at how he's catching the ball. It's all hands. All contested. Strong hands, always strong hands. As courtesy of Twitter, this one is, that clip was courtesy of Angelo FF. So shout out to Angelo FF for that clip. And see, this is stuff people at Washington have been talking about for years. Now, my big criticism when of Boston when he came out, because I love Boston's tape, but he didn't have a second year. Now, if you're playing like that, do you really need a second year? Because you're doing everything you need to do. When you're that good, what's the second year matter? And this thing, the first player I was looking at when I first started watching Boston was Larry Fitzgerald. And because they do have a lot of the same traits. Now, Larry Fitzgerald was far more muscular, but that type of muscle mass doesn't really come on a young guy. Some of it did, but not always. It's like David Njoku's, Miles Garrett's, Larry Fitzgerald's, uh, Megatron. Those guys don't grow on trees. You just pop out of your mom with a six pack and 16-inch biceps. Okay, that stuff just doesn't happen. Don't worry, guys. I'll finish my coffee at some point this morning. But that type of stuff doesn't happen on a regular. But Boston's got the body to support it. And let's look at scheme. Because scheme is one of the things I'm looking at here. Because as you saw in those clips, Boston can take attention. We saw in the minicamp clips where he was getting jammed by the strong safety, picked up by the free safety, had the middle linebacker who had 3 interceptions last year underneath, and still was able to make the catch. Where he had Ross on him, Ross was playing man, he broke away from Ross and still made the catch and was still drawing attention from the middle and the back of the DBs. So he's drawing all this attention in on himself. On the comeback, he went back to the ball. You saw, I forget who was guarding him at the time. So on the comeback, he had his guy coming back to him. He had the outside corner coming in, and he started drawing the attention of the linebackers. So, and he already had the safety, as you can see on the backside, coming after him there. And in the clips of Washington, you saw he was making contested catches, a one-handed catch going out of the sideline, going out of bounds. He was securing the ball, and all of this, he was securing it with his hands. He was going up, he was getting it, he was using those big mitts of his, because you could kind of see when he had grabbed the ball, his hands would have was a big part of the ball. So you're looking at a guy who can be a huge X factor, potentially even the number one target, maybe not in name of being the number one receiver, but the number one target on the Browns. And what that's going to do, scheme-wise, it's going to move back the defensive backs. Because when he goes, because remember, look at all those targets. They were all from 7 feet to, or 7 yards to the end zone. They were all deeper passes. And what we're looking at when you look at that is, Casey Concepcion loves to use his quickness. He and Bond have been used a lot in motion in the off season, in this install period. And that's something I'll get into in my training camp breakdown, is that they're going to have a lot of motion in this. And we're going to be looking at Concepcion and Bond doing a lot of that. And when you're on that side and you're getting a lot of that attention, expect Boston to be in the slot a little bit to allow Bond and Concepcion to remain outside, to use their speed, to use their quickness, maybe even use some motion to get them into place. And have Boston maybe on the outside where the motion will come down and you can use one of those two for a bang 8. I think Jerry Jeudy's role is going to be greatly reduced. I don't think Jerry Jeudy's going to have much of a. I don't think Jerry Jeudy's going to have much of a role. He's going to have a role. He's probably going to be the number one receiver going into the season in name. But let's face it, Bond and Boston have been getting a very good rapport. Bond already had one, and Harold Fannin as well already had one with Shedeur Sanders. Boston has been getting a good rapport with Shedeur Sanders. Concepcion has been working out with Deshaun Watson. Bond worked out a little bit with Deshaun Watson earlier. And both of these guys, all of them came together to throw with both quarterbacks just 4 days ago. The only one I haven't seen much of is Jerry Jeudy. He was working out with Shedeur earlier in the year, or earlier in the offseason. I haven't really seen him since, outside of mandatory activities. He's behind. I'm sure he's been around. I'm sure he's been around the facility. I'm sure he's been working out hard. But when you have two guys like Deshaun and Shedeur putting all this tape out there and showcasing all these guys, Fannin not as much because he's still coming back from his injury. I don't think he participated in minicamp either. But all these young guys working out with these quarterbacks, and your number one receiver ain't there? So that gives me more faith in those guys working around Boston, and Boston being that X factor. Because if one thing, that first big play was to Bond last year, was not more than a fade. It was, I'm in trouble, throw it up to the guy I trust. So Shedeur trusts Bond. If Shedeur ends up being the starter, which I think he will, he trusts Fannin. He and Fannin had a strong linking there. Now if he gets Bond and Concepcion, now you're rolling, because you already got two guys he thinks he can throw it up to, which created a bit of a problem because he really didn't have a lot of faith in his other guys. Now if you have 3 or 4, and one of those guys is drawing 3 and 4 guys at a time on one side, allowing for guys like Bond and Concepcion to use their speed, get out there in open space, which there will be plenty of, all because Boston drew those guys in. and get out in the open field, that's going to create plays. That's going to create mismatches, and you're going to have some big chunk plays there. Add that to the misdirection, you can tell that Coach Monken's putting into his offense. Now you have all that, and what's that do? That spreads the defense, and having that many playmakers spreads it a lot. And now you got Judkins back there. We haven't even talked about him. You give him, what was his biggest problem last year? He was getting hit 4 yards deep in the backfield. Now you got to pay attention to all these guys back here. So they're creating havoc in the defensive backfield. They aren't going to be able to do a run blitz. One of the biggest problems Shedeur Sanders had last year was how effective the zone blitz was. And that was the end rusher took a step down, sometimes two, then disengaged and went back, and then a rusher came from the defensive backfield. He had problems with that. Led to 2 of his interceptions. Well, you're not going to be able to do that as much this time, because if you do that, you're going to leave one of these guys open, whether it's one of the speedy guys or one of the big guys. You're not going to be able to blitz that run. You're not going to be able to blitz the quarterback the way you did last year. So what happens? Now you go back, run a draw play. Those linebackers are 5-6 yards off the ball. Judkins doesn't get hit. Judkins picks up 5 yards a pop. Now, you're saying, pick your poison. You want to get beat by the running game, or you want to get beat by these receivers? And that doesn't even start with the end zone, because you've got Fannin, who's a big guy, we all know. We'll have Concepcion, 6 foot, 190. We got Bond at 6'1", and then we have Boston, 6'4", 215. You got 2 big guys, 1 medium-sized guy, and 1 speedy guy. That creates a heck of a mismatch. And I believe Jerry Jeudy is also 6'1", maybe 6'2". That's a mismatch. Anybody wants to talk about it, whether anybody wants to talk about it, that's dating. Especially what we saw there in Washington. Hands catcher, contested catcher, red zone disaster for any defense trying to stop it. And we saw last year that Harold Fannin has a nose for the end zone. He's very good there. Wish he would have got more opportunities early, but hey, you had David Njoku there. You're not going to get the opportunities early that you could have had. Yeah. So we're going to forgive that a little bit, because David Njoku, the chief, and thank him for all he did in Cleveland. But now it's Fannin's time. Mismatch. So do not sleep on Denzel Boston potentially being the number 1 target on the Browns. Because I don't know, guys, it's not as out of bounds or out of pocket as Mikey McNuggets on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show would say. It's not out of pocket to think that Denzel Boston, while may not be number 1 receiver in name, could end up being the number 1 receiver on the Browns, and could potentially give the Browns their own version of either Anquan Bolden or Larry Fitzgerald. So, that being said, I hope this opens some people's eyes to the bigger picture, what we're looking at here with the rookies and what it can do, and maybe bring some eyeballs on Denzel Boston, which I don't think he's had since he showed up in Cleveland. That said, we're at the end of our road. I've been your host, Joseph Potter. Hit that like and subscribe button, and remember, this shot's on us.